Similar sort of attacks are happening to Nigel Farage right now. He's actually thrown his hat into the ring in the British elections. He originally was not going to run. You know, I've had a bit of time with Nigel behind the scenes. You know, Topher's obviously interviewed him. Nigel didn't want to run. He was living a very good life. He was, you know, traveling the world, you know, doing GB News, #1 British broadcaster voted by the people, and, you know, good friends with the president. And now we see a situation where he was... It was a decision. He decided to throw his hat in the ring when he was out and about campaigning. He wasn't originally running. Rishi Sunak called an early election because he heard that Nigel was considering a run and making an announcement the week later. Nigel said, look, I can't run. I'm going to support the US president. We've got to stop World War III. But getting out there and campaigning, a lot of people rightly pulled him up and said, Nigel, I understand, but I'm in this because of you. I need you to step up now. If not you, then who? And Nigel, not begrudgingly, he stepped up to the plate. He recognizes, you know what? Who else can do this? And that is the Washington-esque leadership I think we all crave. And seeing that, he was welcomed by Clacton the next day after his announcement. Huge crowds, lots of people that flooded the market there, and the market is responding. I mean, if you take the camera of me away, you'll see the polling for this particular area. So this is a YouGov poll of the UK. Just this week, just a week of Nigel announcing and campaigning, Reform UK is almost comparable to the Conservatives. They're 1% off. Nigel has made the point, look, they're gonna win this election. The Labor Party is gonna win this election. We're gonna see a situation where they end up running, and we do see Keir Starmer as the new Prime Minister of the UK. But the Conservatives, and I love this line, the Conservatives will be in opposition, but they won't be the opposition. We're seeing that exact thing happen out in Australian politics. We're seeing this happen with the rhinos now being replaced by the MAGA movement. We're seeing speakers like Senator Hanson and the One Nation Party, people like Craig, Senator Babbitt, and obviously people like John Ruddick and David Limbrick from the Libertarian Party be the alternate. Take a warning. Peter Dutton, you know, you can keep doing this crappy 25% reduction. You can keep subscribing to this net zero policy, but we're going to get you one day with regards to this. We're going to come up and outflank you. And so the polling is very much reflecting that. And Nigel's saying, look, we're now the real opposition.
If conservative parties around the world want to know what their future looks like, look at Victoria in Australia. Look at what a basket case that is. The Victorian Party, the Victorian Liberal Party, are not going to win an election in a very, very long time, if ever. They are undermining their best people. They are ostracising their base, and they are providing a wonderful opportunity for the likes of One Nation and other minor parties. And honestly, during the pandemic, during the lockdowns, it was Tim Quilty MP and David Limbrick MP from the Libertarian Party who were the de facto opposition. Not because they had the numbers, but because they actually had something to talk about. They had principles. Yeah. That's what Nigel Farage has got, and that's what's going to carry him to, relatively speaking, electoral success compared to the Conservatives. If the Conservatives around the world don't actually find some principles and something to talk about real quick, they are going to disappear.
If I can just give some more context to this as well, there have been some huge rallies happening in the UK as well. Obviously, Tommy Robinson, hugely outspoken against what's been going on with mass immigration. I'm actually a big fan of Tommy. I like Tommy. I don't agree with him on every topic. No one does. But Tommy is a guy where you cannot deny the establishment has come after him for voicing his concerns. He's not a well-articulate guy. He doesn't have the accent of Nigel Farage or Douglas Murray, but he's a true blue UK Welshman. I don't know if that's the right phrase. And I don't like how the establishment's gone after him. Now, Tommy and Nigel, these are people that have received a lot of attacks physically. This was an OnlyFans girl, a mother. She threw a milkshake at Nigel. This isn't the first time this has happened.
Did it bring all the boys to the yard?
Well, you know, it's funny you should
I loved his response, though.
It's funny you should say that. If you could bring that video up, this first video, I've got 3 videos for you guys from what's going on there. It's a complete circus, but Nigel's the most interesting thing that's happened. This video number 2
brings all the people to the rally.
Nigel playing off. This isn't the first time he's been milkshaked before. This happened in the EU elections in 2019. In 6 weeks, they captured the vast majority of European seats. It led to the resignation of then Prime Minister Theresa May. Nigel, claims that scalp as a result. But this isn't the last we're seeing of the violence. And Craig, I'm going to ask you about this in a sec. But the third video 3, I want to bring up now. Nigel was out campaigning on the top of I do believe it's their campaign bus. And someone, a left-wing a person, and we know the left wing, starts throwing construction material nearby, and some construction workers try to basically stop him. And then the police, finally doing a phenomenal job, actually end up grabbing him. And so this guy's basically been detained, and I do believe he's being charged. This is a very serious topic in the UK. There are MPs that have been killed. Sitting members of parliament in the UK. Nigel's had one of the best policies I've heard on this topic. He says, "Well, look, we've got a veteran sleeping on the road, on the streets problem. Why don't we enlist some of the veterans to actually be working, to protect our MPs, to be out there with them?" I think that's a great idea. I think it'll actually make the MPs even more conservative. But going back to this violence thing, and this is the last video I'll play. Civil servants have also been, from what's been described, criminally inciting violence against Nigel as well. If you could bring this last clip up. This is from GB News.
It's incredibly extraordinary that Home Office civil servants discuss openly this kind of intimidation. Not only do they talk about violence against Mr. Farage, but also, in one case, civil servants were discussing arresting him. They described the Reform Party as an extremist far-right group. Now, many people will say, well, how do we know if this is true? Now, of course, I'm relying on sources in the Home Office that I've known. I've done a lot of reporting over the years on the civil service. I know many, many people within government, within various departments, and I am 100% certain that this happened. And I know that these colleagues in the Home Office said these incredibly controversial, to the point that, as I said earlier, perhaps even criminal comments internally.
Craig, you've been egged before. You've had violence against you. What are your thoughts on that?
A couple of rallies. There was a rally in Melbourne. We went to, and some guy chucked some eggs at us, and he was led off. Nothing happened to him. I was another in a public park down in Victoria, and a group of 3 people. One of them snuck up behind me, and actually had an egg in their hand and whack across the back of my head. Where her 2 accomplices were filming it to put on YouTube. Right? They post this woman. She never wore a disguise, right? Dressed in the typical sort of Antifa, sort of army boots, a big army jacket. Filmed herself committing a criminal offence and put it on social media, right? And because that was the headline story of the news that day. It was, ha, 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 Craig Kelly gets what he deserves, right? The police finally tracked them down, right? They got a $300 fine with no criminal charges. No offence recorded. $300 fine. I think which they could have got, and they would have got that from the YouTube hits that they did from putting it on YouTube, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So this attack on sitting members of Parliament, that has set a precedent that you can go up and you can bash a member of Parliament, hit them in the back of the head, and you'll get just a $300 fine and get off with it. So
we have a really big problem in our country and in most of the Western world, whereby the left seems to be run by emotion and cannot discuss alternative viewpoints in a debate situation. And whether that stems from maybe education system, perhaps, but this is all emotionally run, really and truly. It stems from, you do not agree with what I say, hence I need to hurt you.
It actually comes from their overwhelming sense of virtue. There's a really fascinating psychological thing that happens when people are convinced that they are not only right and you're wrong, but they're virtuous and you're evil. And that is that noble cause corruption is one way of looking at it. I'll give you the example of a police prosecutor. This is a known problem in prosecution circles, where a prosecutor is absolutely certain that they've got their guy, that's the criminal, but I don't have the evidence to prove it. So I'll just fudge some things and maybe make things look a bit different, or I might just fabricate something outright in order to get him. I'm still the good guy because I'm trying to put the bad guy away, even though they're acting corruptly. And so now we see, when people are saving the world, if we're saving the world from climate change, what's it to you if I just commit a few assaults along the way or this? And they start to justify
Exactly.
some of their most base instincts on the basis that they're still a good guy.
Yeah, look, it's so funny. It's a bit of like you've got a downward approach from the establishment talking down to us in the institutions, Hollywood, and obviously sometimes they do form government. But from the bottom as well, they try to control the streets and sort of get that middle where 95% of the country actually is. The people of Europe aren't putting up with this. In fact,